Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Gerardo Poli.
And this, oh, sorry. Okay.
One of the best bits of advice I've ever received was to find good mentors and to learn from them. Trusted people who have already done what you're trying to do now. I've been fortunate throughout my career to have some fantastic mentors to help guide me, but I realized that they'd be hard to find and also hard to commit the time to one. This is why we've gathered some of the best minds from the veterinary world and squeezed them for their wisdom so that you don't have to learn the hard way.
With the help of our guests, we flip the veterinary profession on its back and explore its soft underbelly to find the tips, tools, and inspiration that you'll need to build the career that you've always wanted.
I'm Gerardo Poli.
I'm Hubert Hemstra, and this is the Vet Vault. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Vet Vault podcast. Today, we are talking to Dr. James Greenwood. James is a practicing veterinary surgeon living and working in Bristol. Originally from a farming family in Yorkshire, James inherited the family trait and devoted himself to a life spent in the company of animals. Since graduating from Bristol University in 2007, James has worked in mixed, equine, and then for the last few years in companion animal practice. Throughout James's life, he has shared his passion for science with his passion for art. Although taught originally how to paint, James's creativity has developed into a deep love for ceramics. He was invited to compete on the first series of BBC Two's The Great Pottery Throwdown, which led to further television work, including the hit CBBC children's television series The Pets Factor. He has developed his own ceramics business, writes for various platforms, and delivers talks on how his passion for science and art have influenced his life.
I spent the day with James and Oliver, James's famous one-eyed Labrador, in their home in the UK. We had a great time picking his brain about his early work experience, about finding himself out of his depth and dealing with imposter syndrome, and how he tries to achieve that ever-elusive work-life balance. He tells us how he took stock of his career and how he made veterinary science work for him. We talked about competence, confidence, and courage, his life as a TV vet, and the absolute necessity of having things in your life that you love doing. We had a lot of fun recording this episode, and I think you'll have the same experience listening to it. James's enthusiasm is highly contagious, and there's a lot of value in the topics we discuss. Please enjoy Dr. James Greenwood.
Dr. James Greenwood, welcome to the podcast. Lovely to
Hi,
have you.
thank you for having me.
So, James, you mostly known as the guy who hangs out with Oliver, the one-eyed Labrador. That's mostly what you're known for. Is that right?
I think pretty much so, yeah. I make no apology. Everyone thinks I'm the best dog in the world, but I'm Christian.
What's it like to work with somebody who is that much better looking than you?
That's great. I mean, I just sort of fade into his shadow, to be honest.
Just riding his coattails into success.
It's like if they have any doubts about his ability as a veterinarian, it's like, hey, do you know that my dog is Oliver? They're like, oh, really? It's like,
James, I asked you for a story, for a cool story to get the audience hooked when we were chatting about this podcast before, and I was trying to figure out a clever way to lead into this question, but I'm just going to come right out and ask you, please just tell me about the baby elephant. I've been dying to hear about the story of the baby elephant.
Yeah, I think we have to go there, do we? That was when I was, how many years qualified? Probably about 4 or 5 years qualified. And I was on call actually for equine practice. And I got it was a weekend that all of the vets, all the senior vets, everybody, I was sort of the lowest ranking of the team, but everybody else was away at a friend's wedding. And I got the call that we were going to be on call for a local zoo where they just had a baby elephant. And I have to say, I was so excited about it. At the same time, absolutely petrified. And we heard that the baby elephant had been born, so maybe 2, 3. So I was on call from Friday, and I think it probably was born on maybe like the Wednesday. So we were kind of, everything's fine, the elephant's fine. And then we get this call in on Friday night saying that the elephant has developed neurological signs. Now, we're amongst vets, so I think we could sort of all agree that the one thing you'd never want to get a call in for is neurology.
Yeah.
So, oh my God. So this baby elephant is basically, I mean, it kind of looks like a neonatal adjustment thing. It was, it was just not doing well. It was circling, it was head pressing. Oh, it was so scary. So anyway, we got there, and there was no other vet there. The zoo vet was away, so I kind of had this baby elephant's life on my hands. And I have to say, it was one of those moments that I recall now as being like quite pivotal, and I'll never forget it. And it should maybe have been, something that I look back and think that was the best thing in my career. But my God, that was just, it was something else. It was like, it was mad. I kind of can't quite believe I was in that position. But yeah, so talk about veterinary taking you to places you never thought you'd be. That's one place I never thought I'd be.
I want to know what happened to the baby elephant.
Yeah, me too.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I don't think it did that. Oh well. So I left the baby elephant. It was still alive.
Yeah.
Then I don't know what happened to it. I don't think it.
Oh my word! That's, as you say, what an awesome opportunity, but what a scary thing. Ugh.
Yeah. And I'd never really been close to elephants. I've never done any charity work or anything like that abroad. So I got there, and this kind of, obviously I was sort of so nervous anyway, just trying to use all of my basic principles, trying to go back to thinking, what do I do in this situation? And there was the zookeeper there, was this pretty scary German lady who pretty much, I kind of was all excited and trying to get in there and to go and look at this elephant. So kind of put my head through the bars and sort of looked at Mum. And she sort of grabbed me back and said, "No, don't do that. Don't do that." Because if one swing of that trunk and your head will be off and all this sort of stuff. So I was already sort of, so scared. And then sort of get this risk of being decapitated by an elephant. So, yeah, pretty full on.
Don't go near. Don't do that. But the baby's underneath your legs.
Yeah.
Wow. I remember when I was at uni and I was doing prac work at our uni farm, and we were tasked with finding the baby calves that were like they were delivered the night overnight. And so we went down the paddock, and it was long grass. So you're searching through the long grass for these little baby calves. And next thing you know, you find one, and they make this little, this kind of like calling sound. And I didn't really realize, but I heard this like thumping, and I turned around, and I was just expecting it to be just the mother, but it was the whole entire herd. And these calves aren't small, right? They're like, 50 kilo or something like that, as far as I remember. Maybe I thought they were heavy. And so the thing didn't want to come with me, so I had to pick it up and carry it. And then what I did is I found myself surrounded like by all these cows, just staring and kind of like circling in. And I was terrified. This is like dairy cattle. This is like dairy cows, like the nicest animals on earth.
Just come to say hello.
Yeah, just come and say hello. Like, what are you doing? And it's just like, I had to steel myself and just make this loud sound, and then they all kind of dispersed and ran away, and I ran away with the little calf. But that was actually like terrifying, but amazing at the same time. So
yeah, I'm trying to think if there's a lesson to be learned from these stories, but I don't know. I don't think if you can think of anything, but it's just the cool stuff you get to go through. But sometimes it is just scary.
Yeah, I don't know. It was kind of like I kind of remember feeling. I don't know what I felt. I think I sort of felt like I couldn't quite believe that it was happening, but at the same time, I kind of felt like I'm so out of my depth that I really don't know what I'm doing here. It was proper imposter syndrome, and I just thought I shouldn't be here. But of course, that's veterinary doubt in your own mind, isn't it? And the point is, there's nobody else there that could stand up to place, step up to place. So of course it sort of had to be me, but I don't know. It was kind of amazing and scary and sort of just so full on. And I think that's something that you kind of just think, well, how have I ended up in this situation? But but that was unique. I have to say that was pretty unique.
That's for sure.
Using basic principles, I've never thought how to adapt it to an elephant.
Yeah, I'm from Africa, in South Africa, and I've never treated an elephant like this. So you've got one up on me on the stories thing. That's for sure. That's for sure. So James, that was equine vet. How long did you do the equine gig for before you changed tack?
So I did my first year. I was mixed. Well, actually, to be honest, I've always sort of done mixed. So I did equine and smalls for the first year, but I wasn't quite getting enough equine work. So I changed to a practice that had a separate equine unit and small animal unit, and I did. I was doing 3 days a week equine. I was doing the equine on call, and then I did 2 days a week in the small animal branch just to keep my sort of hand in.
Yep.
And actually, it worked really well because I think it kind of gave me the opportunity to do. It sounds awful, but to do proper equine practice, and then still do small animal hospital work. So it's kind of I did properly kind of dip my toe in both fields, which was quite unique. And I mean, even then, I remember the practice saying it's not something that they kind of really did, but they kind of made it work because I kind of went in and said I'm not really ready to give up either. And that was so that was amazing that I could do that. And then I think equine medicine probably is still where I'm naturally the most interested from a kind of a science point of view, but the practicalities and the kind of maybe the sort of the lifestyle of an equine vet, I just struggled with it, and I realised that I needed to sort of just find a better balance in terms of hours and all of that. So I went over to smallies. So for the last, what's that now? So that's probably the last, I'd say 8 years. No, not as much as that. Maybe 7 years I've done small animal. 6.5, 7 years I've done small animal work only. I've not gone back to the horses.
Okay, cool.
So a lot of people, a lot of students come out of university with their goal, their dream. This is what I want to do. A lot of them start with the dream of becoming an equine vet, and then they go through uni, and they're kind of like, "Oh, horses are scary." That was for me. Almost got killed twice by a horse. So in the end, I was like, horses are out for me.
Yeah.
But then it was, I wanted to be a dairy vet, small practitioner. So smallies and dairy, and that was it. And then the practicalities of just the way that the practice worked and so forth. I ended up working in smallies. But was that something, how did you get to that point where you were just like, okay, equine vet, I love horses and I love the science behind it and the medicine behind it and so forth. But then, so when you came to the realization that actually you were going to transition away from that, was that a difficult thing for you? Like, how did you get to that point?
Yeah, I think it was a difficult thing to decide. I think it was a combination of a few things. Like, I think there was my sort of, just like my personal life maybe was taking a bit of a battering from the hours that I was spent working. And obviously in equine, there's no opportunity to sort of find a job with no on call or find a part-time role. It was kind of, it seemed at the time as though it was all or nothing. You either had to sort of commit to blood, sweat, tears, everything is equine, horses, everything. Whereas smallies, I kind of saw some of my sort of, peers from uni that had qualified and gone straight into the small animal world, and they were now kind of rocking a 4-day week and no on call, and it sort of all seemed, there just seemed this kind of disparity where I just felt like I was kind of tired of working Christmases, tired of working bank holidays, tired of the constant give. And I think that's probably it. I think it was, I don't know, I hate to say the word burnout because I think that maybe is a bit extreme, but I think I'd sort of lost a little bit of foresight of why I was doing it and where I was going with it, and I was doing a lot of vaccinations. I was kind of, I suppose, at the bottom of the ladder in terms of the other vets that were there. So the work that I was getting to do wasn't necessarily that engaging in a lot of ways. Yeah. And there was no kind of, I don't know, I just felt like I was sort of just holding fort with it, and I'd sort of lost a bit of drive to explore going further with it. So
yeah, totally.
It's a shame.
From an emergency perspective, I plateaued probably around about sort of 2-3 years ago in terms of clinical knowledge. I still learn quite a lot from when I train or involved in the training of our new interns or developing continuing professional developments and materials. But I got to the point where actually the challenge wasn't there so much anymore. And I was faced with specialty and working in ICU or trying to find a different pathway in the actual business itself, and have now taken a more of a role of building and creating continuing professional developments and programs for our vets, but then also building up the veterinary team. There was Alex and I at the pinnacle, not the pinnacle, sorry, at the top of the organizational structure, but then neither of us had created succession planning below us. And the last couple of years have been building people up to do better than what we can do. So yeah, for me I felt like I wasn't the cases coming through were challenging, but not challenging enough. And I had to find something else to keep me engaged in the profession. Otherwise, I would have considered. I was considering at that stage, kind of like a transition out.
Where to go? Yeah. I think it comes with it's that thing of, everybody needs to feel like they're progressing in something, and I think that's something that veterinary still lacks. It sort of lacks that progression for a lot of people.
Yeah, I don't know what your perspective is on this, Hubert, but there's many different pathways. There are very many different pathways for veterinarians to go.
Yeah.
Maybe it's...
Yeah.
But
I hear what James is saying. I certainly have felt that and made the same sort of decisions as you, Gerardo, at a stage of clinically, let's say within clinical practice, which most of us, when we think, I'm going to study to be a vet, that's what you have in mind, is clinical practice. You want to be a doctor for animals, but you do get to that point of plateauing and you're doing the same shit every day. We're getting a bit bored of it, except for those extreme stress situations, and you absolutely can get to a point of going, now what next? I actually remember at a stage, probably about 5 years ago, I could probably dig out my old diary, and there's a line that I sat scribbling. There's a scribbled line in between my to-do list saying, if not this, then what the fuck? Because that's how I felt. I was like, I don't, this is not what I want to do anymore, but I don't know what way to go to. But you're right. There's so many paths to diverge from that point. And even within clinical practice, I've since learned that you can maneuver and wiggle around and change things to suit you a lot better. But it's very easy to feel stuck. And I think that can happen to a lot of vets where you just go, I just need to escape.
I think that's the thing. I think because for me, I had that moment about 3.5 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. And I had that thing of realizing that I was not happy and that it wasn't working for me. But I'd also reached a point where I was so fed up of feeling fed up. I got to the point where I was like, if you don't like this, do something about it. Stop whinging about it. Stop being like that person. Like, let's try and actively do something. And that's not to say that if you're not happy, that means you're whinging. Obviously it's not. But I spent 2 years sort of going to friends' houses saying, I don't like being a vet. I don't like being a vet. And I just thought I am myself spreading this sort of almost negativity about it, which is not, it's not helpful for anybody, least of all myself. And I think it comes at that point where you sort of just reach this point where you just think, okay, if I don't want to do this, what else do I want to do? Yeah. And I did take a bit of a break from it and realized how much I actually missed it. And then had this kind of light bulb moment to say, okay, maybe this is right for you. Maybe you just need to look at how you're integrating veterinary into your life and how you make that more of your lifestyle choice. So for me, being a vet was always about, like, I just wanted to enjoy going to work. That was all I wanted to do. I didn't have huge aspirations to kind of, I don't know, like reach sort of huge clinical levels or do anything sort of heroic or crazy in terms of travel the world and sort all the world's problems out. I just literally wanted to just be a GP vet. That was where I did all my experience. I saw that the guys that were sort of that I sort of did all of my work experience with, they seemed to have a pretty nice lifestyle. They were pretty happy, and I just thought, this is a great job. Like, this is perfect. And then, but that's 20 odd years ago. And so much has changed that I think we maybe, I know everybody sort of feels like maybe their generation had it hardest, but I do feel like our generation, especially in the UK, the sort of the 8 to 10 year qualified vets now, we were the transition vets, where it went from the guys that we saw in practice when we were becoming vets at 18, 19, everything was independent, the money was flowing, the drug monopoly was there, so that we didn't have to worry about online pharmacies. Now it's totally different, and that's not, there's no opportunity there. Of course, there's plenty of opportunity, but it's just very different. And I think that has been kind of something that we've had to navigate that I don't think we necessarily expect to have to navigate.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I can see the veterinary landscape is a lot different than it was. Hey, the expectation was owner go into general practice, buy into the practice, stay in the practice, and then that was your pathway. So, but there's lots of pathways now, and some of the people that we interview are in academia, they're in industry, they're in government, and all of them have different pathways. But do you feel that when you've transitioned, so like now, so actually this is a good point, because do you feel like as if you achieved your version of work-life balance? Because one of the three things that were raised that students want is, one, a positive team environment, two is supportive environment, and three is work-life balance. But my perspective on that is that it's how can you have an expectation or an employer of work-life balance when you haven't yet sorted out for yourself what work-life balance is?
Yeah, work-life balance is one of those terms that it kind of, for me, I don't know if it really means, I mean, what does that even mean, work-life balance? I think if you have to separate work from your life to the point where they're sort of mutually exclusive, I just don't get that. I feel I want veterinary to be a part of my life as well as it being my work. But I think one thing that was quite tricky was to learn to kind of just take that sort of veterinary badge off you and say, I'm a vet, therefore that means I work full-time as a GP vet in a practice, doing clinical work 100% of the time. Like, we just need to learn to forget that and not see that as the veterinary career path. I've got, like you say, I've got friends in government, I've got friends that are working for drug companies, I've got a friend that works for the medicines directorate. All these avenues are definitely available, and it's no shame. People, I remember when we qualified, there was this kind of element of, if people left general practice, it was almost as though they'd kind of failed or that they weren't proper vets, and
totally.
Which is such rubbish, absolute rubbish. People just need to get over that and see the veterinary degree as one of the most kind of useful degrees you can possibly get, and let that take you into directions that you may never have thought were the directions you wanted to go. But don't be afraid of that. If clinical practice doesn't float your boat anymore, or if it never did in the first place, then explore it. Make the most of your degree.
There was a whole lot of like the topic of veterinarians leaving the profession in droves was brought up again in Australia in recent times, and it's something that's happening for a very long time. Maybe it could be an issue with regards to the absolute focus of the degree being on just medicine and surgery, like focus being, let's pick you as a general practitioner, which is kind of a good thing to do. And I would recommend anyone and everyone to do at least a year in general practice, as it's a fallback, whichever way you take your career. But maybe it's similar to the discussion about work-life balance. It's not a negative thing. It's not even a positive thing. It's a thing that is different and unique for everyone, whatever that means for them. But maybe the whole transitioning out, as you said, James, is not a bad thing. It's just a matter of career progression. You've explored that. You've done that.
There's so many places we can go with this conversation. I've written about 10 notes. I'll go straight with what you said, Gerardo. Sometimes changing the situation from full-time clinical practice, it doesn't necessarily need to be leaving completely either. Sometimes it's just a little bit less of. I do think if there is an exodus of vets out of clinical practice, I think it is a bit of a shame, because I think some vets give up on it too soon, or give up on it completely instead of just reshuffling how they do it and what else they do, and they miss out on something that's potentially really fulfilling, really fun, can be really fun. Well, certainly that's what I found personally. James, what did you say you found your balance? What did you do? How did your journey from that stalemate to your happy place look like?
So we've got Oliver snoring in the background. I'm sorry if you can hear that.
Oh no,
yeah. So it kind of goes right back. So when I qualified, when I was getting into vet school, I always had an artistic side that I like. I mean, for me, one of the grades that I used to get into vet school was art, and it was it was a massive part of my life. This kind of creativity and this balance between science and art, and then I got into vet school, which I always knew I wanted to be a vet as well. Like, it was I never really questioned it. That for me was just always the calling. But then I kind of did the 5 years of vet school, and obviously, we all know how intense the vet degree is. You barely have time to sort of think, let alone go drinking and have all the fun that you got to have as well. So I sort of just threw myself into the veterinary degree, spent all the time, on the clinical and science aspect of it, and totally turned my back on the artistic side. And then that kind of carried into general practice as well. So then you kind of go into my first few jobs, my first few years of practice, and again, left all of the creativity on the side. And I kind of reached a point where it was at the end of my equine, and when I sort of mentioned that I kind of got to this sort of turning point, thinking, is this really for me anymore, or what am I doing? And that's when I took a part-time maternity cover locum job with small animal practice on 3.5 days a week, and then my other day and a half a week I spent doing creative stuff. So I signed up to adult education courses. I started a ceramics course, and that kind of is where my life completely changed. So I know it sounds ridiculous, but basically I just started doing a day a week on a pottery wheel, which, obviously that's not going to be for everybody, but that was for me, was this kind of turning point. And that grew, and it grew and grew and grew. So eventually I did an extra day. So I was doing 3 days vetting, 2 days ceramics. And then as that then progressed, it just so happened that there was kind of this wave of interest in ceramics generally in the UK. And we have a really popular... Do you have the Bake Off in Australia?
Oh,
do you know it?
We do, yeah.
So there's a really popular show over here on TV called The Great British Bake Off, which is basically baked cakes. And it's the most watched show. Anyway, they had a sister show called Great Pottery Throwdown, which was a brand new show coming on the BBC, and I applied to go on it, and I got on it, and then literally that has just created this complete transition. I won't bother going into all the rest of it, but essentially that for me was the turning point, because going from sort of being a vet to not being happy to opening my own doors to think what's missing was my creativity, and just completely organically that has taken my life in a completely different direction, but I'm still vetting, and it's just being open to those changes. And it's like you say, just having that reshuffle. It was me stopping and saying what's working, what's not working. What wasn't working is that I didn't have creativity in my life, so I brought that in. And for me, that's what this whole work-life balance thing is. It's not, nobody can tell you what work-life balance is. You have to sort of look and say, what do you want more of, and bring that in. Don't necessarily need to do less of something, but if you can bring more of something in, then do it. Just bring it all in.
I was just going to say, like, there's various levels of transitioning there from one career or one pathway to the next, and then opportunities opening. And like you talked before about imposter syndrome, and like feeling, essentially it's the feeling of feeling like you're a fraud in a situation that you're in. Did you experience that in when you got accepted onto the show, and then you tackle it then, and then when you got, then what, you're not...
What are you trying to say? Just because you see my pottery, you say I'm not qualified.
So James showed me this mug that just spun yesterday, and the handle instead of coming out at a perpendicular nice 9 degrees, it's like
it's a little bit wonky.
60-degree angle. I don't know. It's
Gerardo,
going to have to be
Gerardo, can you bring that mug home for me, please? Please bring me.
Yes,
Thank you.
That's 1 out of 12.
Yeah. That's awesome.
No, yeah, and it was. I did, of course, I did. I mean, God, I got on the show, and I very nearly didn't do it. Again, the whole imposter thing. I was like, I kind of got the first challenge through and thought, this is just no way. I had to make 5 bowls that sat inside each other, and then second challenge was to make a sink. Let it sink. I was like, I can't do that. And I very nearly didn't do it. I sort of phoned the producer and said, this is just, of all of the things I'm happy to do, but I don't want to be the mug that you can to get it. I don't want to be the mug that you can just throw off. So yeah, but I went on it, and then all the other potters that were there, I sort of got, so she convinced me that everybody was amateur potters and there's nothing to worry about. And, and I got there, they were all pottery teachers, they were potters that had been potting for 30 years, they had their own studios. I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? I just decided to sit back and enjoy it, and I just had the time of my life. I got halfway through the show, so it was 6 weeks, and I got to week 3, and it was perfect. I was ready to go, I'd had a ball, it was great. Absolutely loved it.
Maybe there was some kind of uniqueness around your pottery that, it kept you in. You look back through the judge marks, or like, gosh, that's wonky. And if you put it at the same, if you spin it, I'm sure it doesn't spin right. It'll probably tilt the spinning wheel off. Yeah. But you know what? That's just James's style.
That's my style. What's your game?
It's like a Picasso mug. It's such an incredible story. It's such your story of finding something that you love and doing it, and then it turned out like a fairy tale story almost. And I think it's tempting for other people to listen to it and go, yeah, but that was James. He was lucky. He got lucky. But it's time and time again. It doesn't always need to end in a secondary career or a secondary income or something like that. But every well-balanced, happy professional I know, whether it's a vet or something else, has something else like that keeps them sane, if nothing else, and very often will lead to something else. As in your scenario, a secondary income that allows you to cut back on your clinical hours. So no, I think it's a fantastic story. I love that.
But now you're the host of a children's show, a veterinary children's show.
Yeah. So it's interesting you say that, Hubert, because I do get that sometimes. Because now, so that has led on to doing a children's show, which goes out on our screens, which is kind of fly on the wall style kind of vetting. And yeah. It's great. I absolutely love doing it.
I Googled it.
Done really well.
I watched a few snippets on YouTube. It's fantastic. I saw somebody saw somebody squeeze out constipated turds out of a snake, and you.
That seems to be the hit moment so far. But I do get that a bit. I do kind of get this whole kind of, it's yeah, but he's been lucky and la la la. But and because I've spoken about it a few times at various conferences and things. But the point I always try and hark back to is that that's where I am now. But I absolutely swear to you, it all started by me getting on that pottery wheel and doing something I loved, and the rest of it has genuinely been totally organic. And obviously, yes, now I'm sort of slightly working towards it, and I, kind of actively looking for new work and stuff. But essentially, it all started with me just, giving myself some time to do something else that I loved, rather than being completely absorbed into veterinary. And I think that's the thing. The journey hasn't been planned. The journey has been really quite sort of free-flowing. And that's what I kind of try and explain to people is that it's going back to that moment where you just let other stuff into your life.
Even just my story, very, very similar thing, with a lack of creativity and feeling it's all science and not creativity. And I've always had a thing for literature and writing and stuff. So I decided, no, I want to start writing something. Didn't know what. Very long story short, met Gerardo at a congress, told him I've got this idea about writing about veterinary soft skills. Now we're doing a podcast. I'm getting to chat to fantastic people, meet amazing people, outside of my clinical work, it really keeps me pumped, and it actually has a positive feedback loop into my clinical work, because I'm learning about all these new things, and makes me much more enthused when I go back to work. So no, it always, I want to say it always pays off. Maybe not always, but I'm sure it does. Sorry, Gerard, I interrupted you, mate.
Oh, I was going to agree that, so my career itself has transitioned so many times, and sometimes not by actually being a conscious decision, but actually just being open to opportunities and willing to try something different. So as a small animal practitioner, I transitioned to emergency, and that was actually purely out of financial reasons, because I couldn't afford my house. And then I was in emergency, and then I knew the next step was in order to feel less in terms of the imposter syndrome, was to get better in terms of what I knew and how to apply it. So I did further study in emergency. Then from there, I found myself in a senior clinician kind of role, and then from there into a role which was developing training programs, from there into a role of being a veterinary director, and there in a role of project managing in the hospital, a new multidisciplinary specialist hospital, and then from there helping restructure our continuing professional development. So like every 2 years, like I have a path, like I have things I want to do in life, and I have goals and financial goals and things like that. But I'm completely open to where I'm going to be and how it's going to look. And also that I just feel that every couple of years opportunities will come through, that I don't feel so stuck anymore. I don't feel that this is the only thing for me. And so if I do feel a bit sort of constrained, or a bit sort of like as if my pathway might stagnate, I'm totally comfortable now that actually I'm resourceful enough in myself that I can, if something comes open, if an opportunity opens, then I can jump on that.
Do you think that's something you have sort of found hard to develop, that kind of self, I don't know what the word is self-assurance, or that kind of like, you know, not, instead of waiting for somebody to give it to you, do you actively go out and get it? You know, do you feel compelled to stay within one job? Do you feel, because I think that's something that, you know, I know a lot of my generation struggle with, the whole concept of swapping practices and keep moving and darting around. You know, it's kind of feels counterintuitive to sort of have a CV that's full of lots of movement. But actually, it seems to me that a lot of the vets that are really happy or have done really well in veterinary have done exactly that. They've never really kind of got sort of bogged down into one place. They've kind of kept moving. Do you think that's a good thing? Or?
Well, I've been in my position now in the same company, which is Animal Emergency Service. And I started as a veterinarian, and then I built up into senior roles and into director, and now I part-own part of the company.
Okay.
So, but having said that, my career has shifted and changed. And what I think I feel confident stepping into the future, because I feel comfortable that I can be resourceful when I need to be. So if a situation arises where a problem needs to be solved, I feel comfortable that I've got what I have the skill set, the knowledge, the know-how, or even just the fact that when I look at a challenge, it's more of a challenge as opposed to like a roadblock. You know, so how can I make this work? What are the things about it which actually are useful? And how, you know, if I step out the other side of this adversity, I'll be better, faster, stronger, more resourceful, more capable of something. Yeah. So I think there are some challenges that I don't really like taking on, and I'm just trying to think of what they may be. Maybe it's taking on exotics, but in terms of other challenges in my life, in terms of career progression and stepping into things like social media and TV and things like that, that's actually something that's incredibly daunting. I'm sure you come across it as well, but it's also an incredible opportunity and also an exciting time too. So,
yeah, for sure, yeah.
So I think it's more of the fact that I feel comfortable that when a situation arises, I feel comfortable that I can deal with it.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that situation may be, so how do I know I can deal with it? But the fact is,
but I know what you mean. I think some of that comes from, like, you know, we're sort of talking about this sort of dropout, sort of 5 to 6 years into practice. But for me, that does resonate with me as well. You know, I feel like I've got to the point now, you know, my clinical work, I still refer a lot of stuff. I'm still very much GP level work, but my communication skills with clients, you know, and just the general day-to-day enjoyment of the job has kind of just skyrocketed, because I think you kind of get to the point where you do slightly just relax into being a vet a bit, and you kind of get to the point where if you can stick with it, you know, after that sort of 9-10 years of being in practice, which is where I am now, I kind of get to the point where I'm just a bit like this, you know, there's not much that would come through the door that I wouldn't at least know how to sort. You know, it might not necessarily be me doing all of the clinical workup on it, but I definitely know how to get that you know, dog from A to B to where it needs to be. Yeah. You know, whereas 6 years ago, being on call, I used to be so nervous because I'd be like, what if I can't deal with it? Like, what, you know? Whereas now I think, well, there's you know, there's nothing that somebody could call me up and I wouldn't know how to at least sort of sort it.
Is it a factor of knowing what you know and knowing what you don't know, right? And then also acknowledging that there are things that you don't know that you don't even know that exist. So like the big blind spot, but being okay that if there's something that you don't know, you know where to go, who to ask, what resources are available. For me now, I know there's an incredible amount of things I don't know, that when something comes through, I refer to my own book sometimes. I go read a textbook. I'll look on the internet for resources. So I feel completely comfortable not knowing stuff.
Yeah. Well, now I've got my mini vet guide. Yeah. I know exactly where to go.
There we go.
James, do you think that process of relaxing into the job, and I agree with you completely. For me, there was definitely that cutoff of several years of not loving the job and then suddenly going, hey, actually, it's not so bad. I enjoy it. There's several factors in that, but it's definitely that similar feeling of relaxing into the job. Is there something that you think younger vets can do to speed that process up, or is it just a question of just sticking with it for a little bit longer until you hit your stride with it, or asked in a different way, if you look at what you know and how you approach things now, if you had to go back and do it all again, would you do anything differently to get you there faster, or is it just stick it out?
That's a good question. I think keep, you know, there's the confidence thing, isn't there? There's like, you know, there's the age old thing of being confident but not being overconfident, keeping your ego in check, but being confident to step into unfamiliar territory, which I don't know how you put that into words. There's just that, you know, that kind of, that you do need to go beyond yourself a little bit to get yourself to that point. I think for me, more importantly, it was just, you know, the main reason we all got into veterinary is because we just obviously adore animals. And for me, I just remember sort of not, the animals were so secondary to everything that we were trying to do, everything that I was learning, everything for university. It was all science. And I kind of lost that sort of enjoyment of just spending time with a dog or just enjoying being with a cat, which sounds so gushy, doesn't it? I know that sounds ridiculous, true, yeah. But I graduated and it took me 4 years before I got Oliver, before we got a dog in our life. And I swear it changed my perception of being a vet, having my own pet, being able to sort of kind of communicate with clients on a really personal level of saying, oh, you know, well, with my dog, we did this. I'm not saying everybody go out and get a dog, but I'm saying don't forget how much you love animals and just spend a bit of time each day just thinking how great it is that we get to spend our working day with pets and animals. How many people that are sitting in dead-end jobs would literally cut their right arm off just to go and pet a dog a day, you know? And that's it's, you know, it's not to be sort of overlooked, I don't think.
I think we also downplay the impact that we have every day. You know, like a dog coming in with a corneal ulcer. I'm glad he treated so many of those. That for that dog, you've sorted its problem, alleviated its pain and suffering, and then instituted the management which will help the actual eye get better. Like incredibly painful conditions, but so small and easily. Like it's almost we don't really consider the impact of our actions. And if we think back to the impact of our actions, even small ones, for those particular patients, that could be just the thing that just, you know,
totally
makes the biggest difference for them.
Yeah, for sure.
I like what you said, James, about extending yourself a little bit. I think that can speed things up. I certainly, as a younger vet, but still to this day, was always quite wary of overstepping my skill levels or putting myself at risk of failing. I'd rather call the senior guy in because maybe I can't do it, but learning that, the faster you do that, those things that you don't want to do because you're scared you're going to stuff it up, they're probably the things you should just jump in and do, because that's the fastest way to gain that confidence and to get to the point of relaxing into the job. So I like that. Extend yourself and get your attitude right, really.
Yeah. And mentors, maybe. I think another thing is, I was thinking then how to practically put that into terms. If I was listening to this as a new qualified vet, it's all good and well as saying, "Oh, try these things, go forward." But actually, it is, as we've both just said, it is quite difficult to do that, especially with insurance now. So there's this kind of thing of, especially for insured pets, that the clients sort of, there's no reason not to go for gold standard. So we end up sort of saying, "Oh, well, I don't have that certificate to do that surgery," or what have you. We can refer it. So shall we refer it? Oh, yeah, well, we better refer it then. Whereas, again, sort of 15, 20 years ago, and that might not have been the case, the GP vets were turning their hand to a lot more stuff. And I can imagine back then you probably did progress quicker
because you had to.
The total ear canal, the anal gland removal, you would just do it. And it's that's I think it's both great for medicine and for science and for the animals that we've reached that point. But I think it's also a little bit of a shame that general practicing vets have almost kind of had that taken away from them a little bit. But I wouldn't want to go back. That's the thing, But there are ways of getting there. So finding a mentor, finding somebody in the practice that does do those surgeries, finding a CPD that you could go on to learn that technique and pitch it to your boss and say, I'm really keen to learn how to do X, Y, and Z. And get those things under your belt and keep moving with it is what I would say.
I totally agree with you saying there is mentorship is incredibly important, because having seen a lot of interns come through our intern program, all we do provide is support and mentorship, and they are willing to make that step. And for me, the word which kind of sums things up, which people need to have or need to do, but they need to feel a bit courageous. Need to feel a bit courageous to take that step, because you can't decide to be confident. That's the first step in being confident, right? But then you're going to feel like a fraud if you don't back that up with competence. And the only way you're going to be competent is to act and do something, which then builds confidence. But then you need to have something which helps you jump into taking that first action. And I think that's a bit of courage. But then if you're there's a fine balance there. But if you take a leap and have a bit of faith and be courageous, it always helps to have the cushion of a mentor or a supporting structure built around you, so that when things don't go right, then you always got somewhere or someone to go talk to
call on. Yeah, and I think out of hours work as well is an interesting thing to look at. Nowadays students or new grad vets seem to be really kind of like, I don't want to do any on-call. I want to go straight to a job here's me saying, that the on-call really could have drove me to despair when I was a new grad. But looking back and reflecting on that, that is an incredible opportunity to be in those situations where you do have to be courageous. When you get the emergency call coming in, if you're there on your own, you've got to act on it. And it's, it's hard, but that could be a learning curve that sort of sets you up for, quite being able to handle stuff in the future.
I struggle with that same conundrum. Same as you, I despised it. I did on-call for close on 10 years and literally nearly drove me to leave the industry. But I did also learn a lot while doing that, including some resilience and some grit. To go, it's just stuff days going pretty rough, or this case is going pretty rough, but I've been through worse, so I can cope with this.
I also think stopping the spiral, stopping the mind from doing what it does, right, which is to protect us, to keep us safe, to keep us out of stressful situations, right? That's why your mind tells you in its own ways that, hey, look, you feel uncertain, you feel stress, so you can feel anxiety, and you feel the actual physical manifestations of that. It's being conscious of the impact of what your brain's telling you, and actually that's probably one of the key steps into going from not confident something into confidence, is by actually stopping your brain from actually deciding and stopping you from being courageous.
Yeah, from catastrophizing it. I can't do it because it's all going to go wrong. Well,
it hasn't even happened yet.
It hasn't started. How can you spend all that energy worrying what might happen when you kind of just need to go for it?
When I first started in emergency, we had like a mentorship program, but we didn't necessarily have like an intern program, and some of our vets used to vomit on the way to work because of it would be the busiest in Australia, and just like nothing. There was no booked appointments. It was literally whatever walked through the door, and you didn't know how busy it was going to be. You had no idea what was coming through the door, and a lot of that degree of uncertainty was what caused quite a lot of stress. And then that stress was then manifested in physical actual illnesses and some vets leaving and stuff. But there's a thing that I like, and what I like about the job now is actually the uncertainty of it. The uncertainty of emergency is actually what is probably the most exciting thing about it, because there's no set consults. I don't know what's going to walk through the door. It could be an itchy eye, itchy skin, or it could be an eye ulcer, or it could be a GDB, and that's kind of the challenge, I think.
Yeah.
That's a personality thing, that because I can identify with that vomity feeling. I do emergency. I've been a vet for 17 years now, and emergency for just over 5, and I'm still nervous when I drive down. Every single shift, I've got butterflies because of that uncertainty. And you sound like you thrive on it, and I get that impression. I can trick myself into not getting freaked out, and as you say, James, catastrophizing it. I have to. What I do, I tell myself, all right, I'm feeling these physical manifestations, but I'm not going to call it stress or anxiety. I'm going to recognize it as my body getting ready for action.
Yeah.
So my heart's racing, so that's so that I can be better at my job, and I've got to be awake, and I've got to be on it. And when you reframe it like that, it becomes less of a horrible sensation. But I still have a limit. I can only take so much of it. I can't do 7 nights in a row like I used to. I've just learned that my limit is 2-3 shifts, and then I've got to have a decent break otherwise. So there's definitely, I think it's important that people recognize what works for your friend as a vet who's totally pumped and is a young Gerardo Polly, and what works for you, it's not always the same. And again, it's not a shameful thing to go, well, I just can't cope with that. I have my limit. What your limit is not as appropriate for me, and if I try to work the way you do, I'd last a year and then I'd be out for good. So that's something I've had to learn about myself.
3 shifts is my max as well. Yeah. We used to do 4 shifts. I remember once we had a month. This is several years back when we had a couple vets leave, and we did 5 shifts a week. We did that for about a month and a half, and that was right in the middle of like October, November, which is a really busy time of the year. And that almost destroyed me. 4 shifts in a week I'd probably, if I did that continuously, would cause me a mental breakdown. And now that I've transitioned and doing less shifts and more business stuff, 2 shifts is enough. After 2 shifts, my breath.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Where do we go from here? Let's take a bit of a left turn. I'm curious, personally curious, the whole TV gig. I'd love to know more about that. Is it fun? What's it like? Is it people always associate television work with glamour, and what's the reality of it like? Is it? Tell us a bit about it.
Still waiting to see the glamorous side. Oh God! No, it's really fun. I love it. We film over kind of 10 weeks, and they come into the practice and they they just sort of film the stories as they unfold. Really, we kind of, because it's kind of aimed at sort of early teens. So it's not when we're filming, we're not sort of dumbing it down necessarily, but we also avoid some of the really sort of heart-wrenching stories. And then we do quite a lot of promo around it. So we do some live TV, which is quite scary. That's quite scary. I'll say live TV is pretty full on. Yeah. But it's great fun, and it's brilliant. I love it. It's kind of, it's just come at the right time for me, in terms of career progression as well. It's kind of, it's great. I don't know what to say about it.
So do they come in on your regular work days and just film, or do you have set days that's a separate day to your regular rota where you go in and you're doing filming?
So this schedule we're doing on my normal days, which is a bit easier. Last time I was coming an extra couple of days, which was pretty full on. Trying to do that normal working schedule. But no, so they come in for 2 full days per week.
Yeah, okay.
And then it was quite weird to start with, but you sort of learn, because the thing is, you have to sign away your editorial rights to it. So really? In theory, once you've kind of agreed to the cameras coming into the practice, they can just capture whatever they want, and they can. It's amazing how editing affects how a story unfolds. So you think there's only one way for a clinical story to unfold, but my God, can you edit that in loads of different ways? The occasional eye glance to your nurse that sort of says, "Oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing anymore." That put in at just the right time can make you look like the most unconfident vet in the world. So that's where you kind of the production company behind it are fantastic, and they again, it's nice because it's kids, so they're not looking to trip us up any sort of great sort of failures or anything. It's quite nice because they're almost, in a weird way, they're almost kind of putting us on a bit of a pedestal and saying, look how cool vets are and stuff. So that's great. So I sort of feel really trustworthy in them as well, and it's a really nice relationship.
And do you find, because a public face, are you getting clients coming in who wants to see Dr. James because you're the famous vet? How does it affect your day-to-day clinical work?
You get a little bit of that maybe, but it's funny though, because it's more because it's the kids. So normally what happens is I kind of be consulting, and then in reception there'll be a waiting room with mum or dad and a couple of the kids and stuff, and I kind of go out and I spot them that they've kind of spotted that I'm consulting, and you can see them get kind of excited and they're whispering to each other, and then they'll kind of get the phone out and try and sort of snap a sneaky selfie. But then I put them into the consulting room and it's dead. They are silent. They don't say a word, and it's just like, yeah, that's fine. So it's quite cute, really. It's nice, and it's great. It's fun. It's nice.
That'd be hilarious if I've been in the consult room, and this would be hilarious if this was kind of a situation you're in where the dogs come through and it's obviously stoned, and it's got that kind of like glassy eyed look and a bit sway, and you clap your hands and it does a whiz because it's kind of like aesthetic. And then I can imagine like the cameras in there, and the owners, like the parents would be like, "Oh no, we don't have any of that stuff," and some kind of like late teens, maybe background, look a bit squeamish in the background. It's like, no idea where that came from. I've been in that situation before and seen children, like not children, but late teens. Like squeeze themselves in the corner of the consult room and just look really, really small. And the parents turn around and goes, "Do you have any idea what's going on here?" And they'll be like, no.
You know what? Those are some of my favorite cases, and I'm amazed how sometimes the parents just don't put two and two together. I'm standing there, I'm watching this teenager sitting in the background, going pale as a sheet, going, "Oh shit." And mom and dad are just oblivious. It's like, I have no idea. We can't imagine. And you just you should look behind you because I think I know where it's from.
There was one situation where the family had like a rental house, like a second house on the property, and the mother called up the husband who was at home, and the daughter was in the children were in the consult room with us. And the mother rings up the husband and goes, "Vet thinks the dog's stoned." And I was just like, well, it's a possibility. Kind of like, maybe I shouldn't consider that clearly, right? And then the husband's on speakerphone. He's like, "We don't have any of that stuff in our house. I can't imagine where we get it." Oh my God, it's those guys who are living in the house who just moved in. I'm going to go down there right now and kick him out. And I was just like, well, just look behind. Look behind you right there. Your children are like squeamish as hell and squeamish back here. So,
you're angels. Oh. But it works all the way around though. Talk about calling people out. So we were filming last series, and I had a really lovely family in, and they brought their tortoise in. Oh. And there's kind of, I think she's probably about 8 or 9, their daughter, and her elder daughter as well. Anyway, we're chatting away, and this kid was brilliant. She was so engaging on camera, and she was being really funny with all the little clips and stuff. And Charlie, who was filming with us, she said, I'll tell you what, let's just ask James a question. Just ask him something like, why do tortoises hibernate? And I just had one of these moments where my mind just went blank. I was like, I'm sure it's like energy reserves and cold. And obviously it's kids, so you've got to keep it really simple anyway. Yeah. But I said, just give me 5. Let me just make sure that I get the facts right on this. So go straight onto Google. Why does tortoises hibernate? I could not find the answer. It was so bad. I was literally about 5 minutes trying to find it. Anyway, eventually on this blogging site, found like quite a nice little sentence. So I was like, okay, right, yeah, ask me again. So they reset the shooting. And it's like, why James? Why do tortoises hibernate? And I gave this great, it's because energy reserves. All right. Anyway, the little girl then just stops and stares at me right on camera and goes, "Did you just Google that?" You're signing on. It was so embarrassing. So it was really funny. So I walked out the concert. Yeah, exactly. So sometimes it backfires, or like calling each other out.
Did you just Google that?
Yeah. Please tell me they kept that in the show, because that'll be fantastic.
Oh yeah, they did. Of course they did. Yeah, exactly.
Alrighty, where do we go? Gerardo, have you got any burning questions?
No, I think we covered a lot of awesome stuff. Is there anything actually that you would like a topic that you would like to bring up?
Gosh, I mean, I think we've gone quite a lot there.
We talked about.
Yeah. I think it's there's the whole. I mean, the big thing at the moment, especially over here, is the whole kind of mental health issues in veterinary. But I think we've kind of touched on that as much as you can in the remit of talking generally, because I think my take on all of that is it's so individual, and it's just so important to talk. And if you are struggling with it, then know that you're not alone. People do struggle with it, but you do just stop and take stock and talk to somebody about it, because 10 years in, and I've already lost friends to the profession, which just is so heartbreaking. But it doesn't have to be like that, and I think for me the take home thing is just making veterinary work for you, rather than you just working as a vet. Like, look at it and try and find a way to incorporate it into your life, rather than letting it be your life, is what I would sort of say is my kind of 10 years of wrinkles and stress, and needing to sort of look back at my pottery wheel again. So no, that's been
What you said earlier, you left the industry for a little while when you're trying to reassess the situation, but then you missed it too much. What did you miss? What made you come back to it? What is it that draws you back to being a vet?
I missed, again, this sounds really, it just does sound a bit romantic, but I really missed the animals. I realised that, I just realised how much I missed, and the people. So basically what happened was I took 3 months off to just really focus on my ceramics and build up a ceramic brand and all of this sort of stuff. And it went really well. I was selling dog bowls that were personalised, and the orders were just flooding in, and it was amazing. But spending every day on my own in my pottery studio, just making, these things to order. And I just suddenly realized how sort of, you get so used to spending time in a team, and how much the team need to you. And just having company of people and the company of animals. And it was just that I just needed company. And that's what I realized. I needed I have learned that I'm the sort of person that likes to have people around me. which I never thought I was. I thought I was I quite like my own space. I quite like being on my own, but apparently not.
Well,
not all.
I think the key is you need both, obviously, and I think that is very often the problem with vet, because listening to you, I think if you did 5 days a week of just clinical vet work and you don't have your day or two by yourself in the pottery studio, that's going to lead to burnout. But then on the flip side, if you just sat like a crazy person in his pottery studio, things would go wrong. So I think again that comes back to finding your balance and finding the right mix of work versus work and different work, or work versus downtime. Let's talk about books, James. Have you got any, and they don't need to be clinical books or vet related books, have you got any standout books? If I'm going onto my Audible account tomorrow, what should I buy?
Oh my God. What did I listen to recently?
Are you an audiobook man or a
I'm an audiobook man, yeah. But I have to say I was quite disappointed in my last one. It was a Dan Brown, the latest Dan Brown one. I can't remember what it was called. But it was okay. There was a lot of repetition in it.
Oh, but then you can send it back, with the audiobooks. Okay. You can actually say, I don't like it, give me my money back, and they'll give it back. That's the fantastic thing about it.
Yeah, maybe don't post that.
You can. No, they advertise it. They say if you don't like your book, we'll give you a refund. They're very easy about it.
No. So for me, I don't know if you get the same podcast over there, but there's one, Will Young, do you know Will Young is a singer over here. He won kind of one of the sort of, before the X Factor, it was like years and years and years ago. And then recently done a podcast called Homo Sapiens. And it's kind of their look at the LGBT sort of community. And it's a really, really fascinating listen. Not, for everybody, it's not aimed at any particular audience. Yeah. It's just that there's sort of LGBT kind of, representatives, and it makes for some really interesting listening. So that's what I would say people should go and listen to.
Homo Sapiens. All right, I'll put it in there now. Awesome. Okay, are we ready for the last question, Gerardo?
You're really good at articulating this one, mate. You go for it.
Okay, we'll wrap it up with the one question, James. You have an opportunity to get a message out to all of the world's new and recent veterinary graduates. You've got a couple of minutes to give them one message. What would you say to them?
What would I say to them? I would say try and stick with it, because it gets better. Mm-hmm. It's like wine. It's better with age. Relax into it. Try and see the joy in it. And I think it's like we said, just make veterinary work for you rather than you spending the rest of your life just working as a vet. It's a brilliant profession. It can be contorted into so many different angles that once you find your kind of niche in it, and once you find your place within the profession and within the industry, then I promise you there will be nothing else that you would rather be doing. There you go.
Awesome. That's a great place to wrap up. James, you're a gentleman. Thanks for your time.
I think
that's going to be very useful for a lot of people. Certainly, I found it useful.
Good. It's been great to chat.
Thank you so much. Welcome back, and welcome to our Smash It section. I trust you enjoyed listening to James's story. James has built a wonderfully varied career, but it didn't just happen by accident. When James felt stuck and frustrated with his career path, he took the time to do some serious self-examination and find out what was missing from his life and how he could improve on the situation. In this conversation, James mentioned some of the questions that he'd asked himself when he was going through that process of reflection. And I think it's worth looking at these again and posing them to yourself every now and again. James asked himself, what is missing from my life? What do I want more of? What did I used to love that I no longer do? What is stopping me from doing these things? What are my excuses? What would my life look like if I had the right work-life balance for me? Is there a pathway that I can take to get me closer to that life? What steps can I take now? For James, the missing ingredient was art. What is yours? Gerardo, have you got any input on this?
No. Okay. So the missing ingredient, I think, regarding identifying the missing ingredient in your life, one of the most powerful tools that we use is called the wheel of life. And this is where you draw a circle and you divide it into as many sections as you need, which each section representing the important areas in your life. For some people, that's like 4 segments, so four sections in the wheel. Some it's 8. Generally, it's around about 8, and they can be health, work, money, relationships, or like personal relationships, friends, family, travel, diet, or something like that. Career, if I didn't mention, I said work and career, study, knowledge. So you think of the important areas in your life and then allocate a section in that wheel to each of those areas. Then what you do is you score yourself from a scale of 1 to 10 on how happy you feel or fulfilled you feel in that area of your life. So essentially, the center of the wheel is 0 and the outer aspects of the wheel is 10. So you color in that section from a scale of 1 to 10. And essentially what you'll find is, in a quite nicely diagrammed way and very clear way, what areas in your life you don't feel that fulfilled in. And essentially what happens is, when you going through your daily life, you realize for some reason you just feel unsettled, uncertain, uncomfortable, uneasy, or unhappy. And when you break it down into segments, you will soon see which are the ones you need to work on. So we went through this in the Unleashed online conference, and we had numerous people share their wheel of lives, and quite often health came up, or relationships come up, or career comes up. And what it's individual for the wheel is varied between different individuals. And essentially what you'll find is, when you roll that wheel, okay, if you put that wheel on a bicycle and you rolled that wheel, quite often the wheel would give us a pretty bumpy ride. So it's either, if it's nicely fulfilled and you have a large wheel and it'll be a nice smooth ride, you can have a wheel of life which is very small and you've scored yourself low in all of them and look like as if it'd be a nice smooth ride, but a very slow ride. But generally what happens is, you'll have areas where you'd score yourself 9s and 10s, and areas where you score yourself 4 and 5s. And then what you do is you work on that piece of that one piece of the pie, or one piece of the wheel, and you ask yourself the questions: what would be a successful outcome in that particular area? Because you get clarity around what you're going to work on and what you want to achieve. And then you can break that down to what are your 5 major moves, and then your action plans. So what we will do is in the show notes, we will put a Wheel of Life worksheet that you can do and download. And you can have access to the Unleashed online conference, and you can see how we work through that and how we try to break that down.
Fantastic. Gerardo, can people still get tickets to have access to the actual Unleashed conference?
So the Unleashed conference, you can't get tickets to, but you can buy access to the videos. It's almost 20 hours of streamed video covering all aspects of more so performance and productivity and health and things. So we covered in the first day, Hubert, you talked about the top 10 tips from the Vet Vault. Then we rolled into clarity. And then after clarity, we rolled into social styles and how to have effective working relationships with people through understanding their particular personality types. Then in the afternoon, we rolled through fear and imposter syndrome and resilience, and then also how to create your message, share your impact, and have influence. And then day 2, we talked on confidence. And then we talked about self-awareness and then abundance mindset and the impact that has on how you communicate money and how you value money. And then we rolled into habits and also then communicating with clients and how to deliver win-win interactions. And then we finished it off with essentially what I believe are the important things which result in actions in reality. And that is ability to focus, which is components of attention, prioritization and energy, and then motivation, 3 ways to maintain motivation. And the last thing we talked about the journey and honoring the struggle. So there's action-packed couple of days, and you can have access to that. And the first thing we start with is a Wheel of Life. So put links in the show notes.
If I put the link to the Unleashed Conference website on there, can they get access through that?
We'll put the link, which is the appropriate link.
Okay, that's good. I'll do that then. And that's it for today. If you found value in today's episode, please go and tell at least 3 of your friends about it and give us that 5-star review on iTunes. We love your feedback and suggestions. Hit us up on Instagram or send us an email. Just click the link on the website to find ways to connect with us. Now, go smash it.